Hello and welcome to this video. In this video I want to address a lens that Canon has recently released, the Canon RF 800mm F11 IS STM lens, and I want to talk about it and give you my opinion of it, and hopefully my point of view will be helpful. However, if you wish to check out the other video that I've done about the 600 RF millimeter F11 IS STM lens, check it out because I talk a lot about what I've said in this video about that lens. But in general, I'm going to give you my honest point of view from a photographer's point of view when it comes to wildlife. But this will apply to sports photography, sailing photography, anything that requires you to photograph things from a long distance but require stopping action quickly. And you're going to struggle with F11 because F11 is a very small aperture, lets very little amount of light in, and the more light you have coming to your sensor on your camera, the faster the shutter speed you can obtain and the more likely you are to stop action. So 800mm is going to be fantastic, and obviously it's like a dream for a lot of people because many people can't afford the EFL bazooka lenses, which are 500, 600mm at f4, which lets a ton of light in and obviously has 4 stops of image stabilization, as this lens does. And when you couple this with the R5 and R6 mirrorless cameras that Canon's released, you're going to get 8 stops of image stabilization because the camera offers 4 stops as well. And that's fantastic image stabilization. It's great to have. But the downside is image stabilization doesn't compensate for motion. If your subject matter is moving at any speed, it won't help you. And this is why I wanted to talk about the F11 Aperture on this lens, which I think is shocking. And it's unbelievable that Canon has brought a lens out with that sort of aperture. And they're bringing out other lenses, and I do want to address the 500 7.1 RF lens, and I'll do that in a separate video. But in this video I want to talk about the aperture of F11, and when you're trying to balance your shutter speed to be fast enough, because in principle you need a shutter speed equal to the millimeter of your lens. So 800mm you need 8,000th of a second, 800th of a second, sorry, to get fast enough shutter speed to stop motion. And I suspect even 800th of a second might not be fast enough in my experience. You generally need a lot more than that, especially when you're dealing with birds. If you're a birder, if you're someone that wants to photograph hummingbirds, you're wanting to get shutter speeds of, say, 2,500th of a second, because hummingbirds move incredibly fast. The same be true of insects, say bumblebees. You want to photograph bumblebees, you're going to struggle to get a fast enough shutter speed. I just want to briefly tell you about an experience I had when I went to the Royal Armouries in the UK to photograph a jousting event, knights on horses trying to knock each other off the horse with lances. And I was using the 70-200 2.8 lens, which lets a ton of light in, with the 1.4 extender, and I was getting around f5.6. Now it was very overcast that day and very dark, and I noticed a lot of my images were very blurry when I looked at them, and that was all down to the fact that the shutter speed wasn't high enough. I was getting about 200th of a second, with something around the 500mm distance range, and it's not good enough. That you need a minimum of 500th of a second when you're photographing things at 500mm with my 70-200 with the 1.4 teleconverter on. Obviously I was using a crop sensor camera. I think it was the 7D and 80D cameras I were using at the time. But I just wanted to illustrate the point of how important it is to let lots of light come into your sensor on the back of your camera. Obviously, the mirrorless cameras are more sensitive, and you will get a few extra stops of light entering the sensor than you would on, say, SLRs, because technology always advances and improves. But you're never going to get 10 times the quality that you would on an SLR, you know, in terms of sensitivity on the ISO rating. The ISO is related directly to the sensor on your camera. The higher the ISO, the worse your images tend to look. So the lower the ISO, the better. But the only way of getting a lower ISO is having a faster shutter speed and having, you know, lots of good weather. If you can't do that, you have to use what we call specialist lenses that can operate at 2.8 aperture. 2.8 aperture is like a massive open ring in your lens that lets a lot of light in. You know, an F11 is something like that, really small, and you can sometimes suffer from diffraction in your lens. I will put a link in the description box to a DMG file from a popular YouTuber, and it'll take you to his video, and you can check out the file and download it at your leisure and check out the quality. I'm not dissing the quality of these lenses, do not get me wrong. Primes are always going to produce sharp images and you're going to be really happy with the results. My problem is the F11 Aperture is just too dark for most scenarios. On a bright sunny day, yes, it will be fantastic. It will produce the results you want it to do. No problem at all. And it will be hit and miss whether you get the high enough shutter speed to achieve what you want to achieve on a bright sunny day. But on an overcast day, a dark day, forget about it. Sunset, sunrise, forget about it. Indoors, forget about it. If you're doing a football event, for example, and they've turned on the lights, pretty much forget about it, because F11 ain't good enough, ain't going to cut it. Generally speaking, most photographers at football events are using lenses of a 2.8 or f4 minimum, especially at night time, doing a lot of games in the UK, for example, football, are played at night time because it starts to get dark around 3, 4, 5 o'clock at night. So I just wanted to give you my take on this lens. I'm not dissing this lens in any shape or form. It's probably going to produce really good sharp results. But if you're thinking of catching fast motion, I want to give you my point of view from a wildlife and sports photographer's point of view, and tell you why I don't think it's a great lens for doing those things. It's a difficult lens really to quantify whether I would want to use it really. As alternatives, I would steer you towards the EFL lens, the 400mm 5.6. Has no image stabilization, but if you put it on a body with stabilization, you'll get some stabilization obviously on there. There's the AF300 f4 lens. You can always put an extender on that to make it a 5.6. And obviously the Tamron and Sigma super zooms, which I would pretty much recommend. I've done some reviews on those. The 150 to 600s. You've got the contemporary Sigma one and Sport one. The Sport one, you can probably pick it up second hand for around £1,000. The contemporary goes for around £750. So obviously this 800mm F11 IS STM lens is a stepping motor, so it's not going to be as quick as USM motors in terms of focus speed. So Amazon's got it on here at $979.99, so it is fairly expensive. I just can't justify the F11 Aperture. I'm really sorry, I just don't think it's usable. But it's up to you to make your own mind up. I just wanted to give you my take from someone who does wildlife photography and occasionally does a bit of sports, and just tell you that I just don't know where this lens would be useful in terms of its dark aperture. Anyway, I hope you found this video useful, and I hope to see you in the next one. And I just wanted to say have a nice day and thank you for watching.